Hello everyone, I'm your host Joel Brice, and welcome back to another episode of Delta Waterfowl is the Voice of the Duck Hunter podcast. On today's podcast, we talk waterfowl hunting gear. When I say gear, you're probably thinking about items like decoys, waders, or hunting blinds. But today, we talk about one of the most overlooked waterfowl hunting items, and that's optics. I'm joined by Ryan Muckenhirn and Mark Boardman from Vortex Optics to discuss a variety of factors to consider when making your next optics purchase, as well as a number of ways that both binoculars and spotting scopes can help lead to more success in the field. With that introduction, let's bring in today's guests. Mark and Ryan, welcome to Delta Waterfowl's The Voice of the Duck Hunter podcast. How are you guys doing?
Doing good, Joel. How you doing, man?
Hey, can't complain. Cannot complain. So that was Mark. So Ryan, you need a turn. How you doing, Ryan?
I'm exceptional. I was turkey hunting this morning, so it couldn't be better.
Well, or could it? Did you get a bird?
I didn't. It was a mentorship hunt. So I was the mentor. My mentee did not get a bird, but we heard birds. We saw birds. Woods woke up. It's a wonderful experience.
Safety was off at one point, yes?
We were prepped.
You were prepped.
We were ready.
You were close, yes. Yeah. So I was mentoring a different hunter today. So that's actually what Ryan, so if Ryan and I are a little bit delirious today, we're running on very little sleep in the last couple of days. But yeah, it's been a really cool program at Vortex here that we started 3 years ago now, right? I think we've done it all 3 years. Yep. Really cool. It's growing. We're getting better at it every year as far as being more organized and things like that. And yeah, so we took 5 new turkey hunters out this year and killed 3 birds in 2 days. But more importantly, I mean, tons of just really cool wildlife interactions, turkey experiences. A couple of people never hunted before in their lives.
Yes.
Well, describe your mentee's experience when it was appearing as if it might go down, and the question that you asked, Ryan.
Well, it wasn't so much of a question, but it was a statement. It's like it's happening. It's time to prepare. We need to be very conscientious of movement and sound.
Mm-hmm.
And she was overwhelmed with an emotion and a feeling she had never felt before. I asked her afterwards. And little brief. I said, "What could you describe to me the feeling that you had? Have you ever had it in your life?" And she exclaimed that not that she can recall has she ever felt that way before. She said it was exciting, scared, nervous, anxious, but overwhelmingly wonderful.
Yes. I mean, I think you and her described that perfectly. And we were talking about that upstairs, but I think if people who haven't hunted, they don't even know that feeling exists.
Yeah. Yep.
I think is just like really, really cool. Like you didn't even get a bird, but she had this like overwhelming emotion that hadn't tapped into her life before.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. It's a very prehistoric thing, that a vestigial trait left eons ago. And now it has been awakened.
Oh, yes.
Awakened.
That's a good one.
Yes.
The hunter that I was with, she had an awesome day today, made a fantastic shot on a bird. We had about every sort of experience chasing birds around. We were hunting farm country today, and we saw birds fly down. We saw birds gobble. We had birds almost come in.
Yeah.
And then we finally had a bird come in, and she just like did amazing. So it was cool. Awesome.
That's awesome, guys. That's good to hear. There's a soapbox that I jump on as often as I can. And so I've always worked and dreamed and lived in the world of conservation and hunting that intersect. And so I suppose I feel like I check a box through my job. But for those like yourself that are involved in supporting the hunting industry through equipment, optics in this case, I always feel like that's not enough. And I'm so excited to hear of you guys giving back, right? And so if we don't, you guys are probably quite familiar, the ongoing decline in hunting participation, the erosion of the North American model of wildlife conservation, and just the fact that we love to hunt, right? Mm-hmm. And we want more people, we want that to continue on. And so to give back, I think that's a huge kudos to Vortex. And I'm guessing that that's quite part of the company ethos there.
Absolutely. And I'd like to think that we're just scratching the surface with this yet. So it's 3 years in, but it's in infancy. I still believe. And there's more to go, and there's many more opportunities. We've talked about fishing, small game, upland, waterfowl, trapping, even foraging. I mean, just outdoorsmanship in general, and activities outdoors that aren't golf, I suppose, is what we're really going after. And I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, I think it'll be super cool. And I think most people who participated this year will likely go again.
Yes.
Will likely go on their own, start taking that a step further, go on their own. And if some of them don't, though, they're exposed to something they otherwise wouldn't have been exposed to.
Yeah.
They have an understanding that they otherwise wouldn't have, can speak to things in a way they wouldn't be able to before.
Yeah.
And just have a different perspective overall, or a new perspective, or maybe
appreciation and perspective, of course.
Yeah. So it was really cool to see.
Yes.
No, that's great. Hey, I already introduced you guys in the intro of this podcast, but I do want everyone to get a sense of who you guys are as people and as professionals. I guess I'm just going to pick one in no particular order. Ryan, I'm going to go with you first. So on one of my earlier podcasts, I said to the guest, hey, just introduce everyone to yourself. It literally went on for 10 minutes. And so I'm going to make this one time bound. Give us a 2-minute introduction to Ryan, and just where are you from, your upbringing, and then what led you into this Vortex profession.
Sure. So name's Ryan Muckenhirn. I am a native of central Minnesota, actually a little town called Hutchinson. Lifelong hunter. I started hunting when I was about 5, and I was brought up on waterfowl and rabbits, and I've not slowed down with my passion in this industry, or realm, if you will, universe. My first real job was behind the counter in a gun shop, and I haven't left the industry since. I came to Vortex almost 8 years ago. It'll be 8 years in September, through the greatest stroke of fortune I think anybody's ever been given. And I can't wait to retire, although I don't want to retire from here in 60 to 70 years. So, but no, I work here in the sales and tech department at Vortex. Take a lot of calls, customers, wondering what they should look at, what they need, how things work, when they don't, what to do. Make a lot of product recommendations, share a lot of hunting stories, shooting stories with folks all around the world. So it's a hoot.
Yeah, no, it's funny, Ryan. I'm going to make it before the podcast, and I always find there's a little BS session before I hit the record button on almost every podcast, and I thought, I should stop talking because we're going to miss that one. You described your role at Vortex as what I liken to that guy in jail that can get you anything. Let's go through that one again. Tell us your role there.
So if you call Vortex, email Vortex, or stop in, we on the consumer sales side of the house will answer what products you need, what they do, when they don't, how to fix them, or what boots to wear and what knife to carry. We're happy to answer any question you might have related to whatever it is that we do outdoors.
Well, you're the guy to call. You are one of the guys to call. So in good hands.
12 of us. Yeah.
12?
Yeah.
That's great. And I will say, we didn't set this up as a testimonial, but I have lots of experience calling Vortex, working with Vortex products, and I'd have to say customer service has always been top notch. Whether it's technical questions or just being helpful. So call them if you have questions, and here's one of the ones that you might talk to. Mark, Let's shift to you. Let's learn who Mark Boardman is.
So when I have a question, actually, I generally call Ryan as well. So he's a strong internal resource as well. But and you're talking about your experience with Vortex, and I did notice the hat that you have on today. And I appreciate that hat in a big way, because it's not like, we're going to do a podcast with the Vortex guys, I better put my Vortex hat on. That's got a little mileage on it.
It does.
That's not your first time wearing that hat.
No, and I bought 2 of them I bought another one after I liked this one so much, because, hey, they just have a shelf life.
We'll put it in the suggestion box to get that one back.
Yeah.
So, Mark Boardman, born and raised Washington State, so Western Washington. Like Ryan, grew up in hunting and fishing family. It's really just from an early age consumed my life. It's at the core of who I am as a person. Grew up hunting black-tailed deer and Roosevelt elk with the rifle, rough grouse. Got into waterfowling a little bit later, not as much as Ryan ever did. And actually probably a little late in regard to when I left that state, because it's a pretty darn fine waterfowling state. But finished up school out there, realized at the end of school that what I really wanted to do was hunt and fish all the time. And if I want to do that, then I better get a job that's related to it. So I had a couple outdoor retail jobs, one at an Orvis shop, another one at a really cool retailer outdoor emporium. I was in downtown Seattle. Got an opportunity at Cabela's at their corporate headquarters in Sydney, Nebraska. So I was a copywriter for a number of years, ended up in the marketing brand management department doing media relations. And about 7 years into that, got an amazing opportunity here at Vortex and haven't looked back. So I've always been in the marketing department, doing a lot of media relations, media buying, media planning. That's kind of transitioned into making media. So I'm one of the hosts of the Vortex Nation podcast. So this is actually, I like asking the questions, because I feel like we're doing this podcast now and I have all these questions for you and about Delta, but I'm gonna have to refrain. Maybe we'll have to get you guys on our podcast and we'll turn the tables a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. That's kind of the quick and dirty. Vortex is amazing. Like I said, haven't looked back, and it's been a very fast and wild ride, I can tell you that. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I told you guys that I was born and raised in Wisconsin, in the Eau Claire area. Fall Creek was the little obscure town that almost no one has ever heard of. Left there when I was 22, so I've officially lived more of my life outside of Wisconsin than in Wisconsin. But I have to ask this question as two guys who came to Wisconsin. The biggest question I'm wanting to know is, are you guys Packer fans? Can we be friends or not?
I'll go first. I've seen 3/4 of one professional sports game in my life. That's a badge of pride I wear.
There you go. There you go.
So
the answer is no.
Yeah. But it's like, but also there's not some sort of like other allegiance, if you will, at the same time. It's just, you're just, it's not your thing.
It's on when there are other things more important to do.
Okay. Then we can be friends. Friends. That's okay.
We can be, you and I will probably be friends off or friends on, depending on the Sunday. I've been a lifelong Seahawks fan, which probably any Packers fan who hears that, probably wants to, throw a spear at me. But I have adopted the Packers. It's just not, if they play the Seahawks, then I root for the Seahawks. My wife says these games are really hard to watch with you.
I can see that one. Yeah, I don't watch much football at all. It's during hunting season. Mm-hmm. There's better things to do than sit there and watch the TV for 3 hours. But an occasional Sunday night, Monday night game, it's dark outside. What else are you going to do? So, hey, it's good. We can all be friends.
Yeah.
We invited you guys onto the podcast to talk about the use of optics as it relates to waterfowl hunting, waterfowl scouting, maybe some of the crossover of those optics into other applications. But let's not assume that everyone understands who Vortex is. So would one of you guys just give a quick history lesson, founding year, some of the company growth, however you guys want to portray that? I think it's important for people to understand, the company as well.
You want me to take it?
Feel free.
Sure. So Vortex, as you know it, actually early 2000s, but we go back further than that. We have to turn back to about 1986, when our founders, Dan and Margie, started a Wild Birds Unlimited store in South Central Wisconsin, and started with bird seed, bird feeders, and birding accessories. And customers of Dan and Margie's wanted binoculars to look at birds. And at the time, there wasn't like a very good avenue for getting binoculars. So Dan actually went down to a local camera shop, bought all the binoculars they had and marked them up $1. And then customers would come in with them. And if one broke, they'd bring them back to Dan, and he said, well, here's a new set. and so started our warranty. And then some time had passed, and Dan thought there was a better mousetrap. And so he actually set out to design and develop his own line of binoculars. And then that hatched Eagle Optics, who then became one of the largest independent retailers of sport optics on the whole, I think in all of the nation. And yeah, again, that ran until 2017, I think is when we officially retired Eagle Optics, and then just everybody came to Vortex. But Vortex was kind of this intermediate project that turned into this huge thing, of course, in the early 2000s, when, another house brand, so to speak, became really a kind of a titan in seedling fashion then. And then mid 2000s, a few years later, we started with rifle scopes, and then it just came, full throttle from there. And yeah, I became aware of Vortex in 2010, and it was pretty new on scene. You had been there for 2 years at that point, right?
Yeah, I think I got there in 08 or 09 or something, or here, I should say. So yeah, it's been cool. And it's just been amazing to watch the company just transform over time. When I got there, Eagle Optics was, still a big thing and a big deal. And that's, it was bigger than Vortex.
Yeah.
And that's actually what allowed Vortex to even happen.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think the desire, like you said, was Dan and Margie. They had experience on the retailer side. They had experience on the manufacturer side, and all those perspectives coming together. They're like, yeah, we think we can do it better.
Yeah.
And people oftentimes want to know, kind of like, oh, what's the secret sauce to Vortex? Is it the marketing, or is it this, or is it your sales team? And I always say, like, it's going to sound like we're oversimplifying things, but it's really just treating other people how you'd like to be treated.
Yep.
And the customer is at the core of everything we do, every product we make, every decision we make. It's, if it doesn't make sense for the customer, it doesn't make sense for us.
Yeah. And that's been the ethos since day one. And I agree completely. Like that was what sold me on Vortex. I was actually a retailer of Vortex before I was an employee. And, I went from it being a very new brand to me to it being like the number one selling optic in the shop that I worked at. And it became obvious why. Like the company treats their customers as if they're like their sole customer, each and every one of them. And the products stand for themselves, of course. And the service is just absolutely the cherry on top. And yeah, that is really kind of the secret sauce.
Yeah. And I think the warranty, it has been, as an observer, your warranty is commonly out front and center. And I think as hunters, hikers, outdoors folks, we can be tough on our equipment. And mm-hmm. You guys do put that warranty out there front and center. It's a great reason, to purchase Vortex products. Would you guys give us the highlights of that warranty?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, we call it our VIP warranty, which stands for very important promise. And it truly is a lifetime, unconditional, no fault, transferable warranty. There's no paperwork to fill out, no fuss, no muss. I mean, you deal with folks that have questions about it quite a bit, Ryan, I know. And it's designed, again, to take care of the customer. And, we also know that when a person, if they have an optic go down, it's probably during a period of, high use, like hunting season. So we also work very hard at turnaround time. Our repairs team is an absolute crack squad. Oftentimes, I'd say most all the time, inside of 10 days turnaround. And they've actually tightened that up quite a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, you can, once we get the optic in-house, oftentimes it'll be out the door within 2 days.
Yeah.
No, that's and I've actually had some experiences myself using the warranty. So it is as easy as you described it. So I guess as a sportsman, I appreciate that, and thank you guys very much for that. I guess moving into today's subject, we were going to talk about right away. We were going to talk about hunting with optics, waterfowl hunting with optics. But I just kind of had this thought pop into my mind, is that right now there are Delta waterfowl research technicians on the ground in southwestern Manitoba using Vortex optics to do waterfowl pair counts in support of a very large research project that we have. Basically, we're looking, the students are out there counting pairs of ducks. So we're establishing a baseline population from one year to the next, and then we're experimenting and doing data collection on top of those baseline pair counts. And so they're out there, I think they're using Diamondbacks right now. And so it's definitely something that Delta Waterfowl uses in the field, and quite a wide variety. I personally, for my hunting optics, I have Razor HDs, I have Kaibabs, but those Diamondbacks work really good for those well-lit days out there in the field doing that field research. And so kudos to you guys. Moving into the hunting side of it, though, I kind of break down hunting with optics kind of into two big buckets and maybe a third. Kind of the first bucket, at least in my part of the world, is scouting. I always have a set of binoculars on the dash, at times a spotting scope. Why don't you guys kind of take it where you want it, at least that first frame, scouting. What are some of the big things to consider? How do you guys use optics when you're scouting for waterfowl?
Sure. Mobility is a big thing, right? So most of the folks up in your region anyways are going to be vehicle based because there's a lot of ground to cover. And so having something like a pair of binos on the dash and then a spotting scope and a window mount that's an invaluable pairing. And yeah, I mean, as far as options for doing it, we've got a pretty well fleshed out line too. And I think that a binocular would probably be the most important thing if you're thinking about getting an optic for scouting. A spotting scope would be a cherry on top situation. I don't know that it's a prerequisite for success, but it certainly is going to help a lot when you're really trying to hone in on if you've got a spot that is not super accessible to the road, or it's not close, or if you're looking at rafts of birds that are in the middle of the lake as opposed to on the shoreline, and you want to get an idea what they are, make sure they're like diving ducks and not coots. That'll help a lot. Yeah, so huge benefit to running that pairing for waterfowl scout. Absolutely. Snow geese, that's a big one too, that we're seeing a lot of folks. And it's interesting, like when I grew up, it's funny to say this, but we never really scouted for ducks or geese. Maybe we were just very lucky or took it for granted. Like we always had birds on ag fields, or we had assumed that they would be there. And then we lived on like a corridor from feeding or roosting areas. And so we run in traffic on birds all the time. But I'm seeing more and more folks talking about active scouting for waterfowl. And it's funny because it's something that I just never did that much of or took for granted, or was just ignorant to it when I did a lot more waterfowling. And so we're seeing that call more and more and more, especially when we get into like July timeframe, especially with like the dark goose hunters that are getting queued up in the upper Midwest to start chasing Canadas, either in the Dakotas or in western or central Minnesota, which is really neat. And I think a lot of that also is coming from the various mapping softwares that you can get on your phone and things like that. And what a delightful pairing to be able to go out and find birds, contact landowners, or find access points, and then actually have a successful hunt versus what I was doing, where I would just like show up on a field with an Oldsmobile full of decoys and a blind and hope for the best. Yeah.
I mean, absolutely game changing.
Yeah.
I think it's completely transformed just hunting as a whole. I mean, at least I know my biggest challenge growing up was like, well, where can you go? Can we go here? Like, It looks like it might be public. What does that sign mean? I mean, it's just like, the where and that access to those places is just absolutely amazing. So
yeah.
I would add to that. And you pointed it out, Ryan, that like a good binocular, which we have a deep line of binoculars, everything from, what I'd call our entry point all the way up to binoculars that compete at that true top tier, alpha class level of optical quality. We've got, different price performance slots there. And you brought up the Diamondback, which I think is just that sweet spot of price and performance. It really makes it within reach for everybody to hit the field with an optic. I feel, you might have to save up a little bit for it, but you can definitely get there. And I mean, that's my big thing, whether you're waterfowling or turkey hunting or whitetail hunting. I mean, it's one thing often. It's like, well, I'm only hunting, like, I can only see about 100 yards where I hunt. Like, I don't bring binoculars with me. And I'm just like, it blows my mind, because I think it's a game changer for really any hunt or really any outdoor experience. And you waterfowl hunt a lot more than I, but I, if I'm in the blind or whatever, like, my 10x42s are always on my chest, whether, you're trying to, maybe you see those geese, a long ways off. It's like, okay, so what are those birds doing? How are they acting? Or you can, identify probably wing beats or anything. If you're not heading to the field, then it sounds like, oh, yes, of course, the Vortex guy is saying, buy a binocular. But, I truly believe that you're doing yourself a disservice if you're not hitting the field with a binocular on your chest. Like, nearly, we were turkey hunting this morning.
Yep.
I looked through my binos no less than 100 times.
Yep.
Peeking around corners, glassing tree lines, looking at birds, seeing like, okay, yep, we got 3 gobblers up there. The hens are over there. Oh, there's a jake to the, just being able to completely, or better read the situation. Not spook birds.
Yep.
I don't know.
And I get the question quite a bit too, is like, what you were talking a little bit about price points and like what we offer. What is the optic required to do this? Like, what make, model, magnification, and that. And I think we need to match like the goal in mind, or the task or mission to the optic selection. And you're certainly not going to regret having an alpha class pair of binoculars, like a set of Razor HDs on the dash for scouting birds. And especially if you're like looking for individual birds, if you're a band hunter, or if you're out, looking for a particular species or something like that, having something with a better optical system in it is certainly going to improve the situation. But if we're just going out there and doing a pulse check or a head check on animals or birds, and we're trying to get an idea of, are there birds in that area? Are they feeding? Are they roosting? Are they moving into or out of a set of those Diamondbacks like we were talking about? You're looking at a $225 binocular. It's like the last pair of binos that you would need to do that. And something in an 8 or a 10 would be more than appropriate for the scouter. Now, in the field, I suppose it depends on your style of hunting. Like today, when we were turkey hunting, it's a little bit different, but my chest rig and my setup is no different than my big game setup, right? I'm in a stationary position, and I'm not hauling a whole ton of gear out there. And so like, I think it's conducive for success that I just carry my 42 millimeter frame binoculars. But when I did a lot more waterfowl hunting, whether I was puddle jumping or big water hunting, of course, we've got a tremendous amount of decoys. We're wearing waders. We've got a blind bag. We've got a shotgun in a case, and a huge giant yellow lab. That's very excited to jump off the boat. I'd actually consider a smaller pair, like a 32 millimeter frame binocular, like our Diamondback 8x32 or 8x42, and toss it in the blind bag for that in the field. And if you've ever been out on a big water and you do have that raft of divers that turned out to be a giant raft of coots, you can pivot there, and you can make a assessment and deduction pretty quick with a pair of binoculars in hand, and makes a big difference.
The only thing I'd say with that though, Ryan, is because you have that smaller set of binoculars, don't relinquish them to your blind bag. No. Because I feel like I see some guys do that. They're like, yeah, I got the set of binoculars, I throw it in my blind bag, and they don't come out during the hunt. And I'd say whatever bino you have, keep it at the ready.
Yeah.
Because it's just even for well, I got the opportunity to field hunt ducks. We had an amazing shoot this last winter, and because it was so amazing, we had ducks falling out of the sky, and I had my UHD 1042s, and it was like you could keep track of ducks, and you'd be like, okay, yep, that one fell there, that one fell there, and you could glass the field. And then, some ducks, couple of them were still up and walking, and then you could find them better just because of the, that cornfield, the stubble and everything. So, stuff kind of blends in. And because I had those binoculars at the ready, and with the optical quality, we were able to, find birds that we needed to pick up, or that the dog didn't get because there's too many birds to get down, or this one's walking away, we need to go find that bird.
Yep.
It was just super helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you guys touched on a few things there that might be worth lingering on a little bit. Whether you're, if you're in a part of the country that accommodates scouting by vehicle,
Mhm.
and in some parts of the world, people don't have that option. This is my hunting spot. I'm driving there. I really don't have any other options other than public ground, which they may not think on the surface that it's easy to scout, right? You just kind of go there and experience it. But if you are able to scout, a lot of my scouting is during failing light. You're looking at the last flights of, maybe it's late birds out to a field or late birds going back to their roost at night. And I think optical quality or light gathering ability, that is a variable for people to consider, right? And so not all optics are the same. Can you speak to those maybe like me that are doing the most work during that failing light?
Sure. So within our line, and I would say really any optics line, as you ascend, it's to be expected you're getting higher grades of optical component quality and mechanical quality. And what this then leads to, like from the user's experience or the driving experiences, you go to a better tier of binocular. For instance, you get a brighter image, you get a sharper image, you improve color contrast or what we call color fidelity. So like what your eye sees a color as translated through the binocular. Or the spotting scope or the rifle scope or whatever optic that you're using. When you get into a low light scenario, having better grades of optics quite simply are just providing you with more visual information, like allowing it to go through the binocular unimpeded to your eye. You're going to pick up more detail. You're going to see more birds or more game, whatever it is that you're hunting, later into the evening or earlier into the morning. And it's going to pop and it's going to be, much more clearly defined for sure. That Diamondback is, I think, a good stepping point into the low light performance. As you go up from there to like the Viper, for instance, that's where I think it really starts to come alive. And that's where if you are going to scrutinize the low light performance, and that's something that you are going to carry as a precedent in your purchasing decision, like in our line, that is a place to really strongly consider starting. Right in the middle of the pack. I think it's the best value proposition in our line as a whole, balancing, a premium optics experience with a budget. Going up from there, of course, you're still getting better and better optical quality, mechanical quality, but you almost get to like a point of diminishing returns when you start to go higher. And there's a time and a place for it. Like if you're super glass intensive, if you're spending hours a day glassing, I'll encourage a user to consider something like the Razor HD or the Razor UHD, where we're trying to mitigate eye fatigue, or if we have a ton of ground that we have to cover and we're looking for extraordinarily finite detail. And most of this is applicable, I think, to the listeners who are also big game hunters, where you're really trying to pick apart a complex backdrop and landscape and find super small detail differences, whether it's color, movement, anything like that. That's where we want to start stressing that ultra high end optical system.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's really good. And I think the other part there, one of you guys said it, so you guys can claim the genius. I won't assign it to you. But that whole concept of while scouting or while hunting, minimizing disturbance to those very birds that you want to hunt, right? So especially, I'll just put out a pretty classic example, late season, right on the fringe of freeze up. If you had to actually go out to a body of water or a roost or whatever to see if birds are there and you flush them, that could be the last time that you see them in that particular flight pattern. So I think it really, really helps out. And the other part is, I think what we're doing is we're just adding to the bullet point list of positives of having optics. And I think we could probably go on and on and on. So I think we're kind of cherry picking some of our favorites. And one of my favorites, I don't do a lot of diver duck hunting, but it does, like you said, you can tell the difference between coots and divers, but even more so, if you're glassing at long distances, you can see different points or different passes that with the naked eye, you can see that there's birds there, but you can't see how they're precisely working through that terrain. And so you could actually scout from a distance and set up in that location in the dark the next morning. So
you don't have to tootle around and go look for your emergent veg when you're out there, and you can find it from, in a strategic vantage point. And yeah, absolutely. That's very, very true. Very valid.
Yeah.
Well, I'd say from watching those, ducks or whatever, and seeing what they're doing from a distance, like you said, you're talking about finding a food source. You can see those and see what they're doing and apply that to your other spots as well, and be like, okay, there might not be ducks right there, but I can kind of see similar attributes. Maybe that's an area that I need to focus on.
The other part, we're talking looking at ducks. I honestly use my binoculars to look at other hunters sometimes.
Sure.
I can't tell you, growing up in Wisconsin, I don't know. I'm 48 and I'm already telling those stories of when I was a kid and, feeling like I'm getting crustier by the year. But I feel like hunting was so much different then. You had a spot. If you were scouting, you barged right in there, flushed it. If a bunch of birds came out, you hunted it, right? And we just did things differently. And I think optics do allow you to see things, I guess, a little more sensitively without treading on it. But one of the other aspects, kind of what I was getting at, is we'd go to some of these really large marshes, Horicon Marsh, Grand River Marsh, some big other areas. And even 20, 30 years ago, there was kind of a race to the good spots. And if you got to a spot, you always had a flashlight. Because if you heard, oars moving through the water, you flicked on your light, right? And that's how you basically told everyone else, this is my spot, don't come here. And I think optics kind of play a role with that as well. You can, if you have quality optics, you can glass during that dark period, looking for someone's cell phone, looking for their flashlight, just to see where hunters might be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and then, are those ducks, or is that a decoy spread?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is so true. So I've had this huge journey myself with optics. When I first started using quality optics, it blew my mind, where I could see, there was a period of the night where I could see better. I'm talking about, the amount of light. I could see better through my optics than I could with my naked eye. And just, is that real, or am I just imagining things?
Well, the power of subjectivity is very real.
I love that one, yeah.
Or the power of suggestion. So technically, no, you can't see better. But so I had this exact same thing happen this morning. So it was like, what time was sunrise this morning? 5:31.
Probably 5. Yeah. 30,
yeah, something like that. And it was like 5 after 5. So twilight, right? And I was looking at the property we were hunting. It's like 1,050 yards down this big valley. If I look with my naked eye, the amount of visual information that I'm able to glean and process is bleak. Everything's kind of grayscale. You can't necessarily pick out definition or anything like that. Under magnification, you can. If we actually look at we'll talk about light transmission, and that's a bit of a loaded term because there's not actually a transmission of light occurring necessarily. It's not sucking light out of the darkness and producing it to your eye. But your eye gets the most just naked, right? So you're getting as much visual information into the eye as possible, or light into the eye as possible, unimpeded, just looking through them. You put a binocular up there, you're actually getting less, but under magnification, you're able to see these finite differences that the eye will otherwise lose in that low light period. So to answer your question, yes and no, okay. Right? You don't get more light coming through, but you're able to see the very finite details that are lost in the grayscale of darkness under magnification. So the perception is absolutely valid. In that when I was looking down that lane, there wasn't a thing that I could see besides a field, basically, and then the timberline. When I looked through my binoculars, I could see that there was a whitetail walking across the field in front of the timberline, where I just would not have been able to process that without the use of magnification.
Okay, that makes sense. As a trained biologist or scientist, the words coming out of my mouth didn't sound right, but at the same time, when you do throw those optics up, you can see that deer walking, a field edge that you can't see otherwise. Same thing with anything, frankly. But I guess, so that was kind of my first journey. As a kid, it was just knuckle dragger, just regular old optics that, worked or didn't work, helped you or didn't help you. But the other one, the journey that I started to go on was with spotting scopes. And I've had a love-hate with spotting scopes in that, I do a lot of Western big game hunting, above tree line, mule deer hunting, antelope hunting, you name it. And so I was drawn to, let's get some big spotting scopes and see long distances. But what I ended up finding was I felt like I was carrying it and carrying it and carrying it. And when I wanted to use it, I could only get maybe halfway up the magnification scale. And so I don't carry them anymore. And I went with the big binoculars, the Kaibabs, and I love them. I'd glass off a tripod. That's my window mount scouting machine. And then, for me, the Razor HD 10x42s, those are my, as I'm trudging out into the world. And I love it. But some people do use spotting scopes for waterfowl scouting. In that situation, I would suggest the best use there is get a good window mount. Now you're into this really long personal debate of angle versus straight and all that. What would you guys say to spotting scopes?
Well, I think your and my story is identical.
I was going to say you're spot on.
Yeah. Really. The first foray into the West that I had, I was a relatively young man. I was like right out of high school. First thing I did is I bought this gigantic spotting scope because I thought that's what you needed. Because, you read all the gun rags and you see these ladies and gentlemen with these giant spotting scopes looking for mule deer in the sage country. And I found exactly the same thing. I was carrying a 70-ounce optic on a 5-pound tripod, and I was turning the magnification to 50%. And it took me like several years for it to click in my brain that when you have that much magnification, we're diminishing the performance values that make an image great, just like inherently. We're restricting exit pupil, we're amplifying in-air distortion, we're diminishing eye relief, we're increasing the sensitivity of eye box. And it ends up being perceivably like a bad experience for the user a lot of times. So if you are looking at a spotting scope, there's a couple of things that I tell folks to consider immediately. Like first and foremost, optical quality over quantity. Like absolutely most important thing to think about in that. It would be better for you to go with a lower powered spotting scope that was a tier higher in optical quality than to have the magnification. The likelihood is, unless you're looking at super small and finite detail at closer distances, you'll use less of the magnification on that spotting scope than you would think. Better to have better glass at lower mag than higher mag and a step down. To the point that I have for my spotting scope selection in all of our line, we make our low end from the magnification side of the house is 11, the high end is 60. I run our 11 to 33 in our Razor line over any other spotting scope, even for Western big game hunting, like long range stuff. The other part of this is super portable. So it's 25 ounces. It's the size of a soda bottle. The spotting scope that I'm going to carry is the one that I'm going to use. It doesn't have limitations. Well, certainly, I think any optic does. This one doesn't have huge horsepower numbers, but I'm able to utilize almost, if not all of its magnification range effectively because its optical quality is high enough that I'm not in a different situation from the magnification perspective anyways than I would be with a 20 to 60 that I had to dial the 30 power to get any use out of, like a usable and functional image out of. So I'm a huge fan of that spotting scope in particular, that 11 to 33. But really I want to hammer home optical quality 1, optical quantity 2. Straight or angled is an amazing debate. And if you're vehicle based, a straight is a pretty intuitive optic to utilize. Yeah. Newer spotting scopes these days, and from us and from others as well, will have a rotational collar on the body in which you can actually, you can spin the optic 360 degrees on its center axis. And so you can actually, with an angled spotting scope that does have that provision, you can turn the eyepiece back towards you. So if you imagine sitting in your vehicle with a traditional straight spotting scope, like you would orient the optic towards the subject, you would pivot probably 90 degrees or close to look out your window. at that subject. It's pretty quick and intuitive to train it on the subject or target that we want to look at. With the angled spotting scopes that have that rotational collar provision, you'll point the spotting scope at the subject or target, but then you'll pivot the eyepiece back towards you. So you're actually like sitting facing forward in your vehicle while looking through the eyepiece. And I don't do a ton of window work. I still think the straight probably holds the intuition advantage. And
it's going to be more intuitive to look through. It's almost like pointing your finger.
Yeah. I would say there's no benefit optically one way or the other. Like you're not getting a better situation out of an angled from like the raw optics perspective that you are out of the straight. For the vehicle user, I think a straight will be something that will be quicker to pick up game with and quicker to pick up just the general use of it, right? They're kind of an interesting system because there's so much magnification that getting trained on target and then finding that target and like getting all dialed in on it can be a bit of an exercise when you first start. I think the straight's going to lend itself a bit more useful there. Now that's about the only place that I recommend a straight otherwise. So if I'm in field and on foot, then I'm going angled 100% of the time.
Yeah. I always say I like to carry a straight. Mm-hmm. I like to look through an angled.
Yeah.
And then if I do use something antelope hunting or waterfowl scouting in my truck, I do prefer the straight. So I think some similarities there. Mark, you were going to say something.
Oh, no. And I concur with everything you said right there. I mean, the packability of a straight is just, it's going to fit in, your pack pockets a little bit better. It's a little bit more, I guess, streamlined in some ways. But, I definitely gravitate towards an angled for big game hunting, particularly when you're hunting with, other too. Yeah. You got people, Ryan is a lot taller than I am, right? But we could be trained on a subject and all he has to do is, dip his head down in and take a look at it versus like, oh, I need to adjust the tripod or I need to, do an air squat for the next 10 minutes to look through the spotter for, at what you were looking at. So, I mean, there's some advantages there from just, usability, when you have multiple people and from the magnification side, I probably gravitate towards almost like the middle segment. Like I love the 11 to 33, but more is better for me, Ryan. So like naturally in the Razor series, like to me, that 16 to 48 is like the sweet spot. And there's definitely, I know guys that they will not head a field with anything other than the big dog, right? Yeah. They want that 22 to 60. And sometimes it's really needed. I mean, sometimes you really need that optical power. I think, a lot of times, even those 20 to 60s spend a lot of their life between 20 and 40 for the reasons that you described, whether it's, atmospherics, mirage, things like that. You're going to diminish your viewing experience by having it, cranked up. And another thing to consider is like, the varying landscapes that you might be in, that 22 to 60, it's low end is 22. Yeah. That's a lot of magnification, right? You might not always want to be starting on 22, and that's going to depend on, the landscape that you're in. Maybe if you're in Arizona, that's like a moot point. You're like, yeah, dude, 22. Like I'd never even consider going below that, perhaps, or something like that, depending on the game that you're hunting. But I know, like even for me, it was like kind of like an eye-opening experience. I was moose hunting with some buddies, and at times we were glassing very far away. But other times we were glassing using the spotter, like not as far, and having that low end, being able to go below 22. We had both of them side by side. And then after a few minutes, I'm like, I just used the 16 to 48 the whole time because it was subject acquisition was easier. I wasn't really having to go that high in the zoom range with the bigger spotter. I had a better field of view. Like there was just like, for that hunt, and I think for a lot of hunts, that low end can be as important as the high end.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and if you have a lot of magnification, you don't have to use it either. You can turn it down. Like
you got it if you need it.
Yeah. So I don't want to paint the higher magnification spotting scopes in a totally negative light because that's not true. Like if you have it and don't use it, I guess it's better to have it and not use it than to need it and not. But yeah, so I wouldn't say that it's a total detractor to go with a 20 to 60.
I think a lot of it comes down to where are you hunting and what are you hunting? And then also like, what's your mindset? Are you trying to, are you worried, if his, if he's a 200-inch buck, or are you just trying to find a buck?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's, and I appreciate what you guys just said there, because I certainly didn't mean to run down for the listener, the higher magnification spotting scopes. I just found that for my application, I wasn't getting the most out of those optics. So I chose, something that I was more often utilizing, I guess the full suite of its quality, or however I chose to use it. And then also, I walk most everywhere I go when I'm hunting. And so you have to carry it. And so I think if it's sitting in your truck, sitting in your workshop, sitting in your backpack, those are three very different discussions. And, what I like about this discussion, guys, I think, we talked about optical quality. We talked about magnification. We talked about the different lines, price points, emphasis on quality over magnification. If you had to make that choice, I think a lot of these same discussions, travel from whether you're waterfowl hunting to whether you're big game hunting, or whether you're squirrel hunting, or whether you're watching sports or bird watching, nature. I think everything that we laid out, we were using waterfowl as a case study, but this applies to any use of optics.
No, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. 100%, and like I said, a good binocular is just, as far as, for observation, that's the baseline. Like you said, Ryan, we get the question sometimes. I'm going out west. I don't have a binocular or a spotting scope. I'm leaning towards the spotting scope. What do you think I need? And I'm like, dude, get the binocular. Get the binocular.
And for exactly the reason that you highlighted, it's the user experience. Like, the higher the magnification threshold on the optic that you're running, the lower the forgiveness threshold is, right? So you making that choice to go to that Kaibab, that high-powered binocular, you reap the benefits of two barrels, two eyes, all the information coming into the brain through two receptacles instead of one, and then just the inherent intrinsic forgiveness of a binocular over a spotting scope. It's a perfect example. If in a vacuum, or if at the final moments and a decision needs to be made, if it's between spotting scope and binocular, I'm also absolutely going to lean binocular.
It's like, it's going to be so versatile. Like, we keep, saying the same thing over and over, but like, my deer bino is my elk bino, is my waterfowl bino, is the bino that I ran turkey hunting today. Like, that is something that you're going to use across the board for all your hunts. And Joel, I there's definitely times where I use the spotting scope, but I kind of traveled a similar journey and kind of gone, you kind of get here and then you come back. And I agree with, spotting scopes. It's not going to do you any good at the truck. If you don't want to carry it and you're not carrying it, like, it's not doing you any good, if you're leaving it in the truck. And that's the beauty of that 11 to 33 is, it's weighing essentially the same weight as a standard 10 by 42 binocular, to kind of put that in perspective. And then just tripod glassing with a binocular in general is like the thing that, I talk about it all the time. We talk about it all the time. Like, I have fallen in love with that. And for a lot of hunts, you can get away with one or two binoculars, and you're gonna have a better viewing experience. You're gonna want to stay behind your binoculars longer. You're gonna have less eye fatigue because you're using both eyes. It's more natural. It's just a phenomenal way to glass. And by using, Mike McDowell gave me this stat, by the way, one of our other in-house optics experts on your team, Ryan. But he said you essentially, when you put a binocular on a tripod, you essentially, because it is so stable, you're essentially like almost like doubling its magnification. It doesn't
anecdotal.
Right. Anecdotally, like, not scientifically, but effectiveness. There's studies that show, like, as far as like your glassing effectiveness, that would be like essentially like having a 20 power binocular when you lock it down on a tripod. Yeah.
Or a window mount if you're going to be vehicle based.
Yeah. So, to put that in perspective, the person could get a heck of a lot done with a 10 by 42 or 10 by 50, or even an 8 by 42. And then you get into that 12 by 50, one of my personal favorites. and you can do some pretty serious damage.
Oh yes.
And you're going light and fast. You got a lightweight tripod. You got a pretty lightweight binocular with really like the 12 by 50 UHDs. Phenomenal binocular. For an open landscape Western hunt, you can do some damage with that thing.
What I would have to say, being respectful of time, kind of wrapping this one up, no pun intended, buy something to protect your optics with the chest packs. Those are amazing, especially waterfowl hunting, where you're dealing with a lot of moisture. If you're in a salty environment or in brush or you name it, take care of your optics. I run, a chest pack to fully protect my optics. I would use some type of protective case, when I ran spotting scopes and just take care of it. So yeah, the warranty is there with Vortex, but hey, at some point in time, you are going to be without your optics if you have to send them in. So take care of them. On Vortex website, different retailers, there's a lot of different options there, but take care of your optics.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And with the warranty, I always say we work real hard at trying to build our stuff. So you never have to use it.
Yep.
But
it happens.
We get some pretty wild stories.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I have to laugh here. I guess this is just to throw you guys a big pat on the back. I've actually done this. I've actually gone to your social media page and I've just watched some of your funny commercials on Instagram or things like that with, deer urine or someone, having a blind set up in their cubicle. Tell me that's the way it is every day.
It's not far off. I mean, yeah. we take our job serious, very serious, but we don't take ourselves too serious. And so it makes a pretty good lighthearted work environment around here.
No, kudos to you guys. I'll give you full credit. Those are pretty funny, pretty entertaining, good product, good people. Hey, we'll wrap this up, guys. I really appreciate the time. Again, for everyone, Ryan Muckenhirn and Mark Boardman, both in one in marketing, one in sales and tech. Couple great guys here. I will say, this podcast has a dedicated email address, podcast@deltawaterfowl.org. If anyone has questions for Ryan or Mark, feel free to send it there. But I suspect, is there an opportunity for people to seek you guys out directly or just give Vortex a call and someone's going to answer the phone and someone's going to have great information?
Absolutely. Yeah. If you call just our general number, 1-800-4-VORTEX, you'll get routed to the sales and tech team first and foremost. Absolutely. Give us a shout or shoot us an email or grab us on any of the socials. Either way, somebody's going to grab you as soon as possible. We're crazy about getting back to folks about this kind of stuff. And if you've got questions, whether it's about rifle scopes, spotting scopes, whatever, if it's related to what we do outdoors, we want to help.
If you got a funky rifle and you're trying to figure out a way to mount a scope on it, we can Ryan can generally help you out with that. And I'd say we genuinely want to talk to our customers.
Absolutely.
And like you said, I mean, any modern form of communication, the fax machine is probably fired up somewhere. I don't know if somebody wants to use that.
We do have a fax.
But reach out. We want to talk to you and hopefully help you enjoy your optics related activities to their fullest potential.
Yes. Awesome. Hey, appreciate the time that you gave. If I can ever return the favor, let me know. Can see what I can do there. But again, appreciate it. You guys, great spokespeople for Vortex. And any more turkey hunting, or is the season about to wrap up?
I get to sleep in tomorrow. I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, isn't that is bittersweet? So
yeah, our season runs till the 31st, but I'm really tired.
I'm not throwing in the towel yet, and I don't think you are either. But yeah, tomorrow's gonna sleeping till the late hour of 6 a.m. is gonna feel pretty darn good. So
sounds good. Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate the discussion. Stay in touch and take care.
Thanks, Joel. Take care.
Bet.